But in short, we are here to deliver excellent, high-quality health care in a manner that is easy for people to access. And our vision, that is what we are striving to become, is really a destination hospital, a hospital where people think first, you know, I'm going to use Brooklyn Hospital because it's nearby and it's an excellent hospital. We see that in some areas we are beginning to get more people thinking of Brooklyn Hospital as a destination for their needs, particularly in areas like obstetrics, pediatrics, primary care, and we feel very fortunate that we have a community that is open-minded and interested, diverse, and we feel that we can meet all those needs. You may know and have read in the context of healthcare reform that with all of these newly soon-to-be insured people entering the system, needing doctors, there's a great concern. There's some estimates that we need 15 to 20,000 more doctors in a very short period of time. Well, no matter how fast they accelerate healthcare reform, it's still going to take 4 years to become a doctor, and you don't want, take it from a doctor, you don't want those newly graduated doctors taking care of you just yet. So that's a residency, which is a 3-year minimum. So it's really 7 years to produce a doctor who's trained. So there's going to be some access issues, at least as viewed throughout the country, and how they affect New York City, how they affect Brooklyn, are things that we are, I believe, studying and trying to address as we work with the Department of Health and the state. Our challenges are just the worsening health statistics in our community. You may or may not know, but there are statistics called patient quality indicators, which really look at, given any range or any specific illness, how frequently are people hospitalized for that illness. And in Brooklyn, for many common illnesses, asthma, heart disease, flu, pneumonia, diabetes, high blood pressure, for people with those diseases compared to similar people in Manhattan with those diseases, people with these illnesses are hospitalized twice as often in Brooklyn. And there are many reasons for that. And it's not because we're pulling people into the hospital more, it's because they need to be hospitalized. Much of it is access to care issues, which are only going to get worse as Medicaid cuts grow deeper in what is a high-density Medicaid area that is Brooklyn. Very focused on the access issue. As I mentioned, I think a number of reasons, or one of the big reasons why people in Brooklyn end up in the hospital with common illnesses more frequently is access. And so if we can provide better access, people who have high blood pressure or asthma or diabetes may or are likely to address those issues well in advance of their needing the hospital. And that's what we think our role is. And finally, the infectious disease that we are focused on is HIV/AIDS. Of course, the incidence as well as the mortality from HIV/AIDS is much higher in Brooklyn than perhaps in other areas. And we have a tremendous PATH center for the management of HIV/AIDS, and growing that and making sure that people are aware of that is really part of our function.
I am going to leave the good news and end on bad news, which is the state budget. We don't have one right now, and it's an enormous, enormous problem. We've passed 2 what are called extenders, which basically mean state operations continue, but really at a skeleton dollars for it. We don't have a broader policy. We don't have a broader fiscal situation. Certainly we don't have balance. This last year was the worst budget in history until the stimulus bill came along. The great untold story of the federal stimulus bill is what it did to keep states solvent during the time the economy was still created. And it really did do that. And you see what happened in New York State. We didn't have the kind of budget last year. Now the economy is starting to pick up, although you're not seeing it in jobs or any number of other things. We're not seeing it in the state treasury. And we have this terrible budget, $3 billion gap by some accounts. Not, by the way, $9 billion deficit, $3 billion gap now having passed these resolutions that are awful and cut. We need to be working hard on it. We are.
There's about $800 billion in education cuts that we think may need to be made, proposed by the governor, but there's an additional $600 million in education cuts proposed by the governor that we're trying to restore. because even though we recognize it's a very difficult economic environment, our children certainly aren't the ones who created this financial mess, and we can't balance this budget on their backs and further devastate the public education system. One thing I think is clear, I don't know if Senator Squadron spoke to this, we will make sure that we restore the necessary funding to provide free and reduced price Metro cards to every New York City public school student who needs one, because it's disgraceful that the MTA will propose to take that away.
So Willoughby Square is across the street from the old Albee Square Mall in downtown Brooklyn, on Willoughby and Duffield Streets. The park was included as part of the downtown Brooklyn plan, the downtown Brooklyn rezoning, which was passed a few years ago. The idea is to create a new public open space in the downtown Brooklyn area that will service both the new residents in that area, existing residents in surrounding communities, because there really is a sort of lack of open space in the immediate downtown Brooklyn area, as well as to provide some sort of greenery and some open space for new commercial development and new retail development in the area. We are very cognizant of the sort of needs of the community for really accessible open space, both sort of trying to balance passive and active recreation. We understand that some previous developments in the area that have promised open space haven't really delivered on open space that's really accessible and really open and friendly to the community. We want to make sure that what we build at Willoughby Square isn't something that's sort of a corporate park that's accessible only to sort of office workers in the downtown area. We want something that the broader community can use and enjoy, and will be a real amenity. To that end, we are hosting a community design charrette. It is going to be next week at Long Island University's Brooklyn campus right next door, next Wednesday the 21st at 6 p.m. We have a stack of invitations outside on the table next to the sign-in sheets. We encourage everybody who can to attend. Please spread the word around. We'd like to get as much community input as possible into the design of the park, so we can make sure that we have something that really is representative of the community and is something that people can use and enjoy for years to come.
So could you clarify, you said that there were 3 residential buildings currently in the space, and are they owned by the city, and are you expecting some sort of resistance from the residents if it slow this down?
So yes, there are 3 residential buildings, and the properties are owned by the city. And I don't have an expectation of resistance. HPD is the one that's handling relocation assistance, and I can say that they're working proactively and working diligently to offer housing alternatives to the tenants that are there, using bilingual staff, using different time of day to approach, making sure that there's a presence on the site, on the property, to make contact with the tenants that are there. So HPD, I know, is working diligently to relocate those tenants into, like I said before, quality, affordable housing.
The process that we have is very simple. If anyone notices an eyesore in your community, if there's a vacant lot and there's trash, if there's some illegal dumping going on, we don't even investigate who's doing it and why they're doing it. That's not really our concern. We contact the business owner and say, hey, this is who we are, this is what we do. There's a very simple waiver that we have giving us permission to come in and remove the graffiti from the gates on your store. We supply our own paint, our own paint brushes, our own manpower, and everything. All we need is a signature on a piece of paper saying that the business owner is authorizing us to remove the graffiti from their gate. It's a continued process. If someone comes back and repaints the gate with graffiti, we'll come back and we'll repaint it. And what we've discovered is that when we continue to go out and we continue to paint over the store gates and we continue to go into the neighborhoods and find graffiti on the walls, and every time they tag it, we paint it, eventually they stop. Because graffiti is an art to the person that's vandalizing the property, and they need to see it. It's directly connected to their ego. They need to see it. They need to walk past it and see it. So every time they paint it, they spray paint it, we clean it. If it's not there, eventually they'll stop doing it.